There's a quiet truth most people learn late. You can be smart and kind and still feel invisible in a room. Not because you lack value, but because you lack social intelligence. That gap costs more than awkward small talk. It can mean your ideas get ignored, your boundaries get crossed, your confidence thins, and you start believing something is wrong with you. I used to think competence would speak for itself. I believed that if I did great work, stayed polite, and kept my head down, people would eventually see me. But life isn't a scoreboard, it's a conversation. People don't decide whether to trust you by reading your resume. They decide by how they feel in your presence, safe or tense, understood or judged, respected or dismissed. I remember one meeting where I prepared meticulously. I had the data, the logic, the answer, and I spoke clearly, at least I thought I did. When I finished, the room went quiet, not in admiration, but in that silence that says, "Okay, next." Minutes later, someone repeated the same idea in 3 clean sentences, added a smile, and ended with a question. Suddenly, everyone leaned in. Heads nodded. The discussion sparked. I sat there realizing a painful difference. It wasn't only what I said. It was how I made people feel while I said it. After that, I started watching people who could move a room without trying. One friend of mine is like that. He isn't loud. He doesn't dominate. He doesn't perform. Yet when he speaks, people relax. They open up. They listen. They trust him. The more I observed, the more I noticed small choices. He pauses before answering. He mirrors emotion without copying words. And he asks questions that feel personal, but not invasive. And he holds steady eye contact without forcing it. He doesn't chase approval. He creates comfort and clarity, and respect follows. That's what social intelligence really is. Not manipulation. Not a script. Not pretending to be someone you're not. Social intelligence is the ability to read the reality of a moment and respond in a way that builds connection, clarity, and respect. It's the skill of speaking so people want to listen, listening so people want to speak, and staying calm enough that your presence becomes trustworthy. In this audiobook, we're going to build a blueprint you can use now. We'll work on how to talk better, not by talking more, but by speaking with structure. You'll learn a simple 3-part method to express ideas so they land. Name what matters. State your point and invite the next step with a question. We'll train your ability to read people through clusters of signals, eye movement, posture, response speed, and tone shifts without turning you into a suspicious detective. And we'll talk about influence the honest way. Not pressure, not dominance, but steady presence and boundaries. I'll also share everyday stories because that's where these skills are tested. Like someone I know who went into interviews with qualifications but kept getting passed over. He wasn't unqualified. He was tense, rushed, and guarded. The interviewers couldn't feel him, and when people can't feel you, they struggle to trust you. After a few weeks practicing breath control, pausing and ending answers with a curious question, the same person walked into the next interview grounded and clear, and he got the offer. If you've ever replayed a conversation at night, wishing you had sounded stronger, if you've ever stayed silent because you didn't want to be judged, if you've ever spoken up and still felt overlooked, I want you to hear this. You're not broken, you're untrained. And training is good news because it means you can change this. So as we begin, make a small commitment. Don't just listen. Practice. Choose one tool from each chapter and try it within the next 24 hours. You'll be surprised how quickly people respond when you shift your timing, your questions, and your calm. And before we dive in, if someone you care about is struggling to connect, constantly misunderstood, or losing confidence in social situations, share this video with them. And it might be the message that helps them feel seen and the blueprint that helps them change their life. Chapter 1. The real foundation. People remember the feeling, not the words. Before charisma, before confidence, before influence, There is one invisible rule that decides how people treat you. They remember the emotional residue you leave behind. They may forget your exact phrasing, your clever point, even your advice, but they will remember whether they felt safe, respected, and understood in your presence, or tense, small, and judged. Social intelligence begins when you stop trying to win conversations and start shaping the climate inside them. I learned this when I confused being right with being effective. I could build a clean argument, stack facts, and deliver it fast. Yet the room wouldn't move. People would nod politely, then drift away, then do what they already wanted to do. Later, someone else would say a simpler version of my idea, with less evidence, and somehow it landed. At first I blamed politics, then personality, then luck. Eventually I noticed the difference wasn't intelligence, it was emotional timing. Most interactions run on two channels at once. Channel 1 is content, the topic, the words, the information. Channel 2 is signal, your pace, tone, attention, and intent. Content answers, "What are you saying?" Signal answers, "What is it like to be with you right now?" When those channels conflict, people believe the signal. You can say, "I'm open to feedback," while your tone says, "Don't challenge me," and everyone will hear the second message. You can say, "I care," while you glance at your phone, and you communicate distance. A simple trust formula explains this. Trust grows from warmth plus competence. The warmth means, "You're safe with me." Competence means, "I can handle what matters." Many people overinvest in competence, titles, achievements, being impressive, while underinvesting in warmth. Without warmth, competence feels cold or threatening. Without competence, warmth feels pleasant but unstable. The sweet spot is calm, warmth paired with clear competence. Warmth is not extroversion. It doesn't require jokes, constant smiles, or big energy. Warmth is mostly friction reduction. It's how quickly the other person's nervous system relaxes around you. And that can be trained through small behaviors that cost nothing. Start with pace. Slow your speech and movements by 10%. Not dramatically, just enough to remove urgency. Rushing communicates anxiety, and anxiety makes people defensive. A slightly slower pace communicates self-control. So self-control reads as leadership because it signals, "I won't panic, I won't react, I can hold the moment." Next, practice micro-validation. Validation is not agreement. It is acknowledgement of an internal reality. Simple lines like, "That makes sense," "I can see why that hit you," or "You've been carrying a lot." Tell someone their experience is real to you. When people feel seen, they stop fighting to prove they're right. They start listening. Then, add one clarifying question before your opinion. Most people respond too fast because they're trying to display value. Socially intelligent people delay their own viewpoint to gather context and build connection. Ask, "What part of this is the hardest? What do you want to happen next? What would help right now?" A good question is a quiet form of respect. It says, "So your perspective matters enough for me to understand it fully." A friend of mine struggled with this for years. He's smart, successful, and deeply loyal. Yet at family dinners, he felt invisible. When he finally spoke, he would jump in with a strong conclusion. He meant well, but his timing felt like a hard interruption, and people reacted with tension. He went home thinking, "They don't value me." The truth was simpler. He wasn't entering the emotional rhythm of the room. He tried a new rule: enter with attunement, not opinion. He listened for the feeling underneath the story: pride, worry, frustration, then named it gently. "That sounds exhausting. You seem really proud. I get why you'd be annoyed." Only after that did he offer a thought, and he offered it as an addition, not a verdict. The result was immediate. The same people who used to push back began to lean in. He didn't become louder, he became safer. Presence is the real charisma. Presence means you're not performing. You're not scanning for status. You're not loading your next line while the other person is still speaking. You are fully there. When someone feels your attention, they feel valued. And when people feel valued, they give you influence without you asking for it. One more skill that separates socially intelligent people from socially anxious ones is repair. Everyone misses cues. Everyone speaks too sharply sometimes. The difference is whether you pretend nothing happened or you reset the signal. Repair can be as simple as, "Let me try that again. I came in too strong," or "I want to understand you, not win." Those sentences lower defensiveness because they show self-awareness. When you practice repair, you stop fearing mistakes, and that calm becomes contagious. People relax because they sense you can handle tension without denial. Try a repair line this week and watch the temperature drop. Try a tiny experiment today. In your next conversation, choose one person and make a private goal. Leave them feeling lighter than when you arrived, not by entertaining them, but by stabilizing the moment. Use the 10% slower pace. Offer one micro-validation. Ask one clarifying question. Then stop. Don't over-explain. Don't chase the perfect ending. Let the calm do the work. You'll discover something counterintuitive. The less you push to be impressive, the more impact you have. Because people don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the person who makes the room feel clear, steady, and human. That is the real foundation, and everything else in this blueprint builds on it. Chapter 2. Talk better. How to speak. So people actually listen. Most people think the problem is that they don't talk enough. In reality, the problem is that when they do talk, they lose people halfway through. Not because what they're saying is wrong, but because the way they say it creates friction. Social intelligence in speaking is not about sounding impressive. It's about making it easy for others to stay with you. I learned this when I noticed a painful pattern in my own conversations. Whenever I cared about a topic, I spoke faster. I added more context. I explained my reasoning in detail, thinking clarity came from completeness. Instead, I watched eyes drift, bodies turn away slightly, and interruptions creep in. People weren't disagreeing with me. They were disengaging. Later, I realized something uncomfortable. Over-explaining is often a form of insecurity. It's the subtle belief that if you don't say everything, you won't be taken seriously. But socially intelligent speakers trust the weight of a single, clear point. They don't flood the room. They guide it. If there's a reason respected communicators sound calm even when the topic is serious, they speak with structure. Structure creates safety. When people can predict where your thought is going, their nervous system relaxes, and relaxed people listen. The simplest structure I've ever used, and the one I return to constantly, is what I call the 3-sentence rule. Not because life must be short, but because attention is fragile. If you can't hold someone for 3 sentences, you won't hold them for 10. The first sentence grounds the moment. It names what matters right now. It shows awareness of context, emotion, or constraint. When you do this, you're telling the other person, "I'm here with you, not inside my head." I once watched a colleague begin a presentation by saying, "I know we're all under pressure to deliver quickly. Yes, and no one wants more complexity." That single sentence did more work than 10 slides. Everyone leaned in because they felt understood before being informed. The second sentence is your point. One idea, clean and settled. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They stack arguments, add disclaimers, and dilute their own message. Socially intelligent speakers don't rush, but they don't hedge either. They state what they see. Not, "I might be wrong, but maybe we could consider." Instead, I think the issue isn't effort, it's focus. That difference changes how people hear you. Calm clarity signals confidence without aggression. The third sentence opens the door. It invites response instead of demanding agreement. Influence grows when people feel included, not cornered. Does that align with what you're seeing? What feels risky about this to you? Would it help if we tried this for 1 week? That question transforms a statement into collaboration. You're no longer performing. You're leading a shared thought. I saw the power of this structure in a friend who used to dread speaking at work. He was smart, prepared, and thoughtful, yet meetings drained him. Whenever he spoke, someone interrupted or redirected the conversation. He felt invisible and assumed he lacked presence. We practiced one thing only: saying less, on purpose. At the next meeting, instead of explaining his entire analysis, he said, "We're trying to grow without burning out the team. I think the bottleneck isn't effort. It's unclear priorities. Can I walk through one adjustment and get your take?" No one interrupted. People nodded. The conversation followed him. Nothing magical happened. He just made it easy to listen. Another habit that quietly destroys influence is verbal shrinking. Phrases like "just," "sorry," and maybe feel polite, but when overused, they train others to treat your words as optional. Social intelligence isn't about eliminating softness. It's about choosing it intentionally. There's a difference between humility and hesitation. Humility says, "I'm open." Hesitation says, "I don't trust my own presence." People respond to the signal, not the intention. Try replacing apologies with orientation. Instead of "sorry, this might be dumb," say, "let me frame this clearly." Instead of "just a thought," say, "here's what I'm noticing." You're not becoming arrogant. You're becoming anchored. This matters outside of work too. In personal relationships, unclear speech creates confusion and resentment. I once watched someone try to set a boundary by talking around it for 10 minutes. The other person left unsure what was being asked. When boundaries are buried in explanations, they're easy to ignore. Clear speech is kind speech. One sentence to ground, one sentence to state, one sentence to invite. That structure works everywhere: dates, conflicts, texts, family conversations. Especially conflicts. When emotions rise, structure keeps you from reacting. It slows you down just enough to stay in control. Here's a small exercise. For the next 24 hours, answer every meaningful question using 3 sentences or fewer. Don't rush. Don't decorate. Let silence do some of the work. You'll notice people respond differently. They won't just hear you. They'll feel steadier around you. And that's the point. Talking better isn't about dominating conversations. It's about creating clarity without tension. When people feel calm around your words, they trust your direction. That trust is the beginning of real influence. In the next chapter, we'll build the second pillar of social intelligence: how to read people accurately through clusters of small signals, without guessing, without paranoia, and without turning every interaction into a test. Chapter 3. Read people. The quiet signals behind every conversation. Once you learn to speak with clarity, the next skill that changes everything is learning to read the room. Not in a creepy, mind-reading way. Not as a human lie detector. Social intelligence isn't about catching people. It's about understanding them so you can respond to what's real, not what you assume. For a long time, I missed this. I only listened to words. If someone said, "I'm fine," I took it literally. If someone said, "sure," I heard agreement. Then I'd be shocked when they disappeared, resisted, or exploded later. What I didn't understand is that words are often the least honest part of a moment. People use words to stay polite. Their bodies speak louder. The problem is, most of us either ignore signals or we overinterpret them. We see one cue, crossed arms, a short reply, a glance away, and we jump to conclusions. They hate me. They're lying. They're disrespecting me. That's anxiety pretending to be insight. Real social intelligence reads patterns, not single signs, and it confirms gently instead of accusing. There are 4 quiet signals I pay attention to first. The first is eye behavior, not some dramatic, if they look left they're lying myth, but simple presence. Do their eyes stay engaged when you speak, or do they keep searching for escape? Do they soften when you validate them, or do they tighten? When someone's eyes relax, their guard is lowering. When their eyes dart, they're scanning for danger. Sometimes danger isn't you, it's stress in their own life. The second signal is response speed. Some people respond quickly because they're confident. Others respond quickly because they're anxious. But a sudden change is meaningful. If someone was responsive and now becomes delayed, clipped, or unusually formal, something shifted internally. That shift might be discomfort, fatigue, distraction, or doubt. Don't label it yet, just notice it. The third signal is body orientation. People lean toward what they want and angle away from what they don't. Feet and shoulders often tell you more than words. In a group, watch who turns toward whom when a topic comes up. In a one-on-one, watch whether the person stays open or starts protecting their space. The fourth signal is tone change. Humans are musical. When someone's voice drops, tightens, speeds up, or loses warmth, it's usually emotional. This is why texting causes so many misunderstandings. You lose tone. In real conversation, tone is the emotional headline. Here's where it becomes powerful. You never read one signal alone. You read clusters. If someone looks away once, it might mean nothing. If they look away, respond slower, and angle their body away, now you have a cluster that suggests disengagement or discomfort. Clusters reduce paranoia because they require evidence. I remember a conversation with a friend who I thought was upset with me. He was quiet, gave short answers, and didn't ask questions back. My old brain would have spiraled. I annoyed him. Instead, I slowed down and gathered signals. His eyes weren't sharp. They were tired. His shoulders were heavy, not defensive. His tone wasn't irritated. It was flat. That cluster didn't scream anger. It screamed exhaustion. So I tested it with a soft check. You seem a bit drained today. Is it one of those weeks? He exhaled, almost relieved, and said, Yeah, my dad's been in and out of the hospital. In that moment, I realized how many relationships break simply because we guess wrong. I could have taken it personally and pulled away. Instead, I offered support, and our trust grew. That soft check is the missing piece most people never learn. Socially intelligent people don't just observe, they verify with respect. They ask questions that invite truth without forcing it. A useful line is, I might be reading this wrong, but. It lowers defensiveness because it gives the other person an easy exit. Another line is, do you want to talk about it, or would you rather take a break from it? That respects their autonomy. My cousin used to get into arguments with his girlfriend for this exact reason. He would interpret her silence as punishment, and she would interpret his pushing as pressure. They weren't bad people. They were bad readers. When he learned to say, "You're quiet, are you upset with me? Or are you just overwhelmed?" The fights shrank. Half the time she'd say, "I'm just overwhelmed." The other half she'd say, "Yes, I'm upset, but I don't want to explode." That single question replaced guessing with clarity. There's another truth. Reading people is also reading yourself. If you're insecure, every neutral signal feels negative. If you're angry, every delay feels disrespectful. Social intelligence means checking your internal filter before you interpret the outside. Ask, what story am I making up right now? That question alone can save you from unnecessary damage. Practice this skill in low-stakes places. In a meeting, now notice who becomes more animated when a certain topic appears. In a family conversation, notice who withdraws when the energy gets sharp. You're not judging, you're training pattern recognition. And then use one gentle verification. Not a confrontation, not a diagnosis, just an invitation. Did I land that the wrong way? What's your hesitation? What do you need from me right now? These are social intelligence questions. They turn confusion into connection. When you can read people accurately, you stop chasing approval. You stop taking everything personally. You stop fighting shadows. You start responding to reality, and reality is where influence lives. Because the most charismatic people aren't the loudest. They're the most deeply attuned. They make others feel understood, and understood people naturally trust, open up, and follow. Chapter 4. The Likeability Switch. How people instantly feel comfortable around you. There's a moment in every interaction where the other person decides, usually without realizing it, whether they feel comfortable with you or guarded. That decision happens fast, often within the first few exchanges, and it has very little to do with how impressive you sound. It has everything to do with whether their nervous system relaxes or stays alert around you. This is what many people misunderstand about likability. They think it's about being funny, agreeable, or endlessly positive. But true likability is not entertainment, it's regulation. It's the quiet ability to lower emotional tension so people feel safe being themselves near you. I used to believe I wasn't naturally likable. I wasn't loud. I didn't dominate rooms. And I didn't always know what to say. What I didn't realize was that likability isn't about adding energy. It's about removing friction. Once I understood that, everything changed. The fastest way to activate likability is something I call the switch. Validation, specificity, and shared reality. When these three are present, people open up almost automatically. Validation comes first. Not agreement. Validation. This is crucial. Validation says your reaction makes sense, not you're right. Most people skip this step because they're afraid it means surrendering their position. In reality, validation gives you influence. When someone feels emotionally acknowledged, their need to defend themselves drops. They listen more. They soften. The simple validation sounds like, "I get why that frustrated you." That's a lot to carry. Anyone in your position would feel torn. These sentences don't solve anything. They stabilize the emotional field, and once the field is stable, solutions become possible. I watched this play out with a close friend who always clashed with his younger brother. Every conversation escalated into debate. One night, instead of correcting him, my friend said, "I can tell you feel overlooked, and that hurts." The room went quiet. His brother didn't argue. He talked. Years of tension eased in minutes. Not because someone won, but because someone finally felt seen. The second element, specificity. Vague kindness feels shallow. Specific recognition feels real. Instead of "good job," say, "I appreciate how you stayed calm when that got tense." Instead of "you're great," say, "You explain things in a way that makes people feel included." Specificity tells people you're paying attention. Attention is rare, and rarity creates value. Think about the last compliment that stayed with you. It probably wasn't generic. It likely described something precise about how you showed up. That's because specificity bypasses suspicion. It doesn't feel like flattery. It feels like truth. The third element is shared reality. This is where connection deepens. Shared reality means naming something both of you are experiencing in the moment. This room is intense today. That was an awkward silence. We're both trying to figure this out as we go. When you name shared reality, you reduce isolation, and the other person stops feeling alone in the moment. I once met someone for the first time who immediately said, "These networking events always feel a bit fake to me." I laughed. Not because it was clever, but because it was honest. In one sentence, he collapsed the wall between us. We were no longer strangers performing roles. We were two people inside the same situation. Here's the important part. These elements must be subtle. Overdoing validation sounds patronizing. Overdoing praise sounds manipulative. Overdoing shared reality turns into complaining. Social intelligence is about calibration. One sentence is often enough. Another mistake people make is trying to be liked by being endlessly agreeable. They nod, smile, and suppress their real reactions. This creates a strange effect. People feel something is missing. Inauthenticity is part of likability. You don't need to mirror opinions. You need to mirror humanity. I had to learn this in dating. I thought being likable meant never disagreeing. But what actually created attraction was calm honesty. Saying, "I see it differently," without heat or defensiveness, made conversations richer. People don't trust perfection, they trust coherence. Here's a small practice. In your next 3 interactions, consciously do one of the following. Validate an emotion, offer a specific observation, or name shared reality. Don't do all 3. Just one. Then pause. Let the moment breathe. Watch how the other person responds. You'll notice a shift, less tension, more openness, more ease. That ease is the foundation of charisma, because charisma isn't about being fascinating. It's about making others feel comfortable being real around you. When people feel comfortable, they talk more. When they talk more, you understand them better. And understanding is the doorway to influence. In the next chapter, we'll build on this by learning how to create conversational gravity, how to make people want to stay in the conversation without forcing it. Chapter 5. Conversational gravity. How to make people want to stay without trying. Some people don't talk much, yet conversations seem to orbit around them. Others speak often, but the energy slowly leaks away. The difference isn't personality, it's gravity. Conversational gravity is the pull that makes people stay present, lean in, and keep engaging without you chasing attention. I misunderstood this for years. I thought good conversations were built by adding energy, more stories, more jokes, more enthusiasm. So when a moment went flat, I tried to fix it by talking more. That usually made things worse. I was filling space instead of shaping it. Gravity doesn't come from motion, it comes from control. Socially intelligent people understand rhythm. They know when to speak, when to pause, and when to let silence do the work. Silence, now used well, is not awkward. It's powerful. It creates contrast, and contrast creates focus. Think about the last conversation that felt meaningful. Chances are it wasn't rushed. There were pauses, moments where someone stopped, considered their words, and spoke with intention. Those pauses told your nervous system, this is safe, you don't need to perform. The first skill that creates conversational gravity is the pause. Not a dramatic pause, a natural one. After someone finishes speaking, wait half a second before responding. That tiny delay does 3 things at once. It signals respect. It gives you time to choose your words, and it subtly positions you as grounded rather than reactive. I practiced this deliberately, and the effect surprised me. People began to say things like, "That's a good question," or "I hadn't thought of it that way," even when my response wasn't particularly clever. The pause amplified the weight of what followed. When you remove urgency, your words gain density. The second skill is mirroring, but not parroting. Mirroring means reflecting the essence of what someone said, not repeating their sentences. If someone says, "Work has been overwhelming lately," you might respond, "It sounds like you're carrying more than you expected." That reflection tells them you're tracking their internal state, not just their word. When people feel mirrored, they feel understood. When they feel understood, they go deeper. Depth is magnetic. It keeps conversations alive without effort. I once watched a friend who is exceptionally good at this. He rarely interrupts. He reflects one feeling, then waits. The other person almost always continues, often saying, "Yeah, exactly," before sharing something more personal. He isn't pulling information out of them. He's creating a space where sharing feels natural. The third element of conversational gravity is asking questions that open doors instead of closing them. Many questions shut conversations down without meaning to. "Why did you do that?" feels like an interrogation. "Don't you think that was risky?" invites defense. High-gravity questions feel spacious. Good questions don't demand explanation. They invite reflection. Questions like, "What part of that mattered most to you?" Or, "What did that change for you?" Or, "What are you hoping happens next?" These questions don't corner people. They give them room. The one question I return to often is simple. How did that land for you? It works in professional settings, personal conversations, even moments of tension. It shifts the focus from positions to experience, and experience is harder to argue with. There's another principle here that most people overlook. You don't need to respond to everything. Conversational gravity increases when you let some things pass. Not every statement needs a comment. Not every silence needs filling. When you respond selectively, your responses feel intentional. This was difficult for me at first. I equated silence with failure, but once I stopped trying to prove engagement, people started feeling it. They could sense I wasn't performing. I was present. I saw this clearly in a difficult conversation with someone close to me. They were emotional, speaking quickly, or circling the same point. My instinct was to calm them by explaining. Instead, I paused, mirrored one feeling. "You feel trapped right now," and stayed quiet. They stopped. They breathed. Then they said something new. The conversation shifted because I stopped steering and started holding. Here's a simple practice to build gravity. In your next conversation, choose one tool only. Pause, mirror, or ask one open question. Don't combine them. Let that single move shape the interaction. Notice how the other person adjusts. You'll feel the pull strengthen. Conversational gravity isn't about being fascinating. It's about being steady. When people feel steady around you, they trust the space you create. And when they trust the space, they stay. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how this gravity turns into influence, how calm presence and clear frames allow you to guide situations without force or manipulation. Another layer of conversational gravity is emotional pacing. Many conversations lose energy not because they're boring, but because they move at the wrong emotional speed. Some people rush past feelings before they're processed. Others linger too long and drain the moment. Socially intelligent speakers learn to pace emotions the same way musicians pace sound. When someone shares something personal, resist the urge to immediately elevate or fix it. Let it breathe. A simple response like, "That sounds heavier than you expected," followed by silence, often invites a deeper truth. Depth doesn't come from clever follow-ups. It comes from patience. Well, I noticed this in myself when conversations felt shallow. I was unconsciously steering them toward interesting instead of real. Once I slowed down and allowed moments of quiet after emotional statements, people naturally went deeper. Not because I pushed, but because I stopped interrupting the process. Another underrated aspect of gravity is emotional consistency. People are drawn to those who feel emotionally predictable in a good way. Not flat, but stable. If your reactions swing wildly depending on mood, people stay guarded. When your responses are calm, even under tension, people trust the space you create. This is why people often describe certain individuals as grounding. It's not what they say, it's what they don't do. They don't rush. They don't overreact. They don't hijack the moment with their own story. Their restraint creates gravity. There's also a powerful distinction between curiosity and interrogation. Curiosity feels open. Interrogation feels directional. The difference is intention. Curiosity seeks understanding. Interrogation seeks confirmation. If you already know the answer you want, your question will feel heavy. For example, "Why would you do that?" pushes someone to defend. But what led you there invites reflection. High-gravity questions don't trap people. They give them room to explore their own thinking. When someone feels free to think out loud around you, they want to keep talking. That's gravity. One final element is emotional containment. Sometimes people don't need excitement or empathy. They need someone who can hold the intensity without amplifying it. When someone is upset and you match their energy, the emotion escalates. When you stay steady, the emotion slowly settles. I once sat with someone who was spiraling emotionally. I didn't interrupt, reassure, or correct. I simply stayed present and calm. After a few minutes, their voice softened on its own. That's not coincidence. Nervous systems sync. The calmest one often leads. Conversational gravity isn't about being magnetic. It's about being stable enough that others don't feel the need to brace themselves. And when people don't brace, they stay. Chapter 6. Instant Influence. How calm presence becomes authority. Most people think influence comes from force, being louder, more confident, more certain than everyone else. In reality, the strongest form of influence is often the quietest. It comes from emotional control and clarity, not pressure. When you can stay calm while others react, you naturally become the reference point in the room. I didn't understand this at first. I thought influence meant convincing people. So when someone disagreed, I leaned in harder. I explained more. I defended my position. What I didn't realize was that every defensive move weakened my authority. The more I tried to prove myself, the less grounded I sounded. Influence begins with what psychologists call framing, the way a situation is defined before decisions are made. Whoever controls the frame controls the conversation, and the most powerful frames are delivered without tension. One simple frame is the clarity frame. Instead of arguing details, you name the core issue. Let's separate the emotion from the decision. The real question here is timing, not effort. When you do this calmly, people stop circling and start focusing. You're not opposing anyone, you're organizing the moment. Another frame is the standards frame. This is how you communicate self-respect without aggression. I'm happy to discuss this, but I'm not going to do it in a rushed way. I care about the outcome, so I want us to be precise. Standards tell people how to treat you. If you don't state them, others will set them for you. A third frame is calm authority. This one is subtle. It's not what you say, but how you say it. Calm authority shows up when you respond instead of react. When someone pushes, you slow down. When someone raises their voice, you lower yours. This creates contrast. Contrast creates influence. I saw this clearly in a tense work conversation where two people were competing for control. Voices rose. The energy tightened. One person stayed quiet until the room ran out of steam. Then he said, "Let's pause for a second. We're all trying to solve the same problem." The shift was immediate. He didn't win the argument, he won the room. Instant influence doesn't require dominance. It requires regulation. The person who can regulate themselves becomes the emotional anchor for others. This also applies in personal life. In relationships, influence isn't about winning fights. It's about setting a tone that invites resolution. And I once watched a friend completely change a recurring argument simply by saying, "I want to understand you, not win this." That sentence lowered defenses more effectively than hours of explaining ever had. A key mistake people make is trying to influence while emotionally activated. When your heart rate is up, your words lose precision. You may sound sharper than you intend, or softer than you mean. Socially intelligent influence waits until the body settles. Even a single deep breath can change how your message lands. Here's a practice. The next time you feel the urge to jump in and correct someone, pause. Ask yourself, what frame would help here? Not what argument, but what frame? Is clarity needed? Is a boundary needed? Is calm needed? Then speak from that frame in 1 or 2 sentences. Stop there. Influence grows when people experience you as steady. They may not agree with you immediately, but they'll respect you. And respect is what makes influence last. In the next chapter, we'll take this further by learning how to set boundaries that increase respect instead of creating conflict. One of the most misunderstood aspects of influence is timing. Many people speak too early, before the emotional dust settles. Others speak too late, after momentum is gone. Social intelligence teaches you when not to speak, which is often more important than knowing what to say. When tension rises, the most influential move is often restraint. Silence, when intentional, reframes the moment. It signals confidence. It tells others you're not threatened by disagreement or urgency. That pause gives you leverage, not because you demand it, but because you don't chase it. Influence also depends on emotional congruence. If your words say one thing but your body signals another, people trust the body. You can say, "I'm open," but if your jaw is tight and you're breathing shallow, the message doesn't land. Authority comes when your internal state matches your external message. This is why breath control matters. A slow exhale before speaking lowers your heart rate and steadies your voice. That steadiness changes how people hear you. Calm voices sound certain even when they ask questions. Agitated voices sound unsure even when they state facts. Another key element of influence is choosing which battles to enter. Socially intelligent people don't respond to everything. They let small things pass and step in only when it matters. Selectivity increases perceived authority. If you comment on everything, nothing you say feels weighted. I learned this by watching leaders who rarely spoke, yet everyone listened when they did. Their silence wasn't absence, it was calibration. When they finally spoke, it felt deliberate. That deliberateness is influence. Framing also works inward, not just outward. The way you frame a situation to yourself affects how you show up. If you tell yourself, "This is a confrontation," your body prepares for defense. If you reframe it as, "This is a clarification," your nervous system stays regulated. Influence starts internally. There's also power in naming process instead of content. Saying, "We're talking past each other," or "Let's slow this down," shifts the conversation without attacking anyone's position. You're not arguing the point, you're adjusting the container. In personal relationships, this is transformative. Instead of defending yourself, you name the dynamic. Instead of escalating, you regulate. That regulation often leads the other person to match you. True authority doesn't dominate space. It stabilizes it. The paradox is this: the less you try to influence, the more influence you have. Because people don't feel pushed, they feel guided. Influence that lasts is borrowed from trust. And trust grows when people experience you as calm, clear, and self-contained, especially when things get difficult. That is instant influence, not loud, not forceful, just unshakable. Chapter 7. Boundaries and Respect: How to be firm without creating distance. Many people believe that setting boundaries will make others dislike them, so they avoid it. They stay flexible, agreeable, and available, even when it costs them energy, time, or self-respect. Over time, something quiet happens. They feel resentment. Others sense uncertainty, and respect slowly erodes. The truth is uncomfortable but freeing. People don't respect you because you're nice. They respect you because you're clear. I used to confuse kindness with self-erasure. I would say yes when I wanted to say no. I would explain myself in circles, hoping the other person would understand and not push. But unclear boundaries don't prevent conflict, they delay it. And when conflict finally arrives, it's sharper than it needed to be. Socially intelligent boundaries are not emotional walls. They are calm statements of reality. They don't attack. They don't justify endlessly. They simply describe what you will and won't do. A powerful boundary has two parts. The first part shows willingness. The second part shows limit. I'm happy to help with this. I'm not available after 7 p.m. I want to hear your perspective. I'm not okay with being spoken to that way. When you combine willingness with a limit, you reduce defensiveness. You show cooperation without surrender. I saw this change a friend's life. He was constantly overwhelmed at work, staying late, picking up extra tasks, and feeling invisible. When he finally said to his manager, "I am committed to doing great work and I can't keep taking on new tasks without reprioritizing," something shifted. So he wasn't punished. He was respected. His workload became clearer. His stress dropped. His presence strengthened. Another mistake people make is over-explaining boundaries. The more reasons you give, the more openings you create for negotiation. You don't need to convince anyone that your boundary is valid. Calm repetition is enough. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I'm going to pass. Said without anger, these sentences train others how to treat you. Boundaries also require emotional regulation. If you set them while frustrated, they sound like rejection. If you set them while calm, they sound like self-respect. Tone matters more than words. This applies deeply in personal relationships. I once watched someone save a friendship by setting a boundary early instead of letting resentment build. And instead of pulling away silently, they said, "I value our time and I need more balance in how often we talk." The conversation was uncomfortable, but it prevented months of quiet distance. Here's a simple practice. Write down 3 situations where you often feel drained or resentful. For each one, create a 2-sentence boundary. Willingness first, limit second. Practice saying it out loud until it feels neutral, not charged. Neutral boundaries are the most powerful ones. When you hold clear boundaries, something interesting happens. People don't pull away, they adjust. They know where you stand, and knowing where you stand makes you easier to trust. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together by building daily habits that make social intelligence automatic. So you don't have to think about it, you just live it. And one of the hardest truths about boundaries is this. People often test them not because they are malicious, but because they are unsure where you stand. Unclear boundaries invite pressure. Clear boundaries reduce it. When you don't define your limits, others will explore them for you, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes persistently. Many people believe boundaries should only be used when something goes wrong. In reality, the most effective boundaries are set early, calmly, and without emotional charge. They don't appear as reactions, they appear as standards. And standards, once established, quietly shape how others interact with you. I learned this when I noticed how differently people responded to the same boundary depending on my emotional state. When I set limits while frustrated, they sounded like rejection. When I set the same limits while calm, they sounded like clarity. The words barely changed. The energy did. This is why tone matters more than phrasing. A boundary delivered with tension invites pushback. A boundary delivered with neutrality invites adjustment. People may not like every boundary, but they almost always respect consistency. Another important distinction is between explanation and justification. Explaining a boundary can be helpful once. Justifying it repeatedly weakens it. The more you defend your limit, the more it sounds negotiable. Socially intelligent boundaries don't argue for permission. They state reality. I won't be able to do that. This isn't something I'm available for. I'm choosing not to engage in that conversation. These sentences don't accuse. They don't persuade. They simply inform. And information delivered calmly carries authority. Boundaries also protect relationships, not just individuals. Many friendships and partnerships break down not because of conflict, but because of unspoken resentment. When you don't express your limits, you begin to withdraw silently. The other person feels the distance but doesn't understand why. Clear boundaries prevent this slow erosion. I once watched a relationship transform when one person stopped hinting and started stating. Instead of hoping the other would notice, they said, "I need more balance in how often we talk." The honesty was uncomfortable, but it created relief on both sides. One person stopped feeling drained. The other stopped guessing. There's also a deeper layer to boundaries. Self-boundaries. These are the limits you set with yourself. How quickly you respond. How much emotional labor you take on. How often you override your own needs to keep the peace. External boundaries collapse when internal boundaries are weak. Social intelligence includes knowing when to step back, when to rest, and when to say nothing. Not every message needs a reply. Not every emotion needs to be absorbed. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It's necessary if you want to remain grounded and present. Here's a simple reframe that helps many people. Boundaries are not something you do to others. They are something you offer to the relationship. They tell others how to stay connected to you without causing harm. When you hold boundaries consistently, people learn how to relate to you. They stop testing. They stop guessing. They relax into the structure you provide. And that structure creates respect. In the long run, people don't distance themselves from your boundaries. They distance themselves from your resentment. Clear boundaries prevent resentment from forming. That's why they are one of the highest forms of social intelligence. When you can say no without guilt, yes without fear, and remain emotionally steady throughout, you don't just protect yourself. You become someone others trust, rely on, and respect. And that respect doesn't come from force, it comes from clarity. Chapter 8. Social Intelligence. Habits. How to change. How people see you in 14 days. Social intelligence isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built in small, repeated behaviors that quietly reshape how people experience you. That's why insight alone doesn't change your social life. Habits do. When your responses become consistent, people stop evaluating you moment by moment. They start trusting you by default. Most people try to improve their social skills by waiting for big situations, important meetings, difficult conversations, high-stakes interactions. But pressure is a poor teacher. The real transformation happens in low-stakes moments. Short conversations, casual check-ins, brief exchanges where your nervous system isn't overloaded. The first habit is daily emotional orientation. Before you speak, take one breath and ask yourself, what's happening emotionally here? Not what should happen, but what is happening. Is the energy tense, tired, rushed, hopeful? This single question aligns you with reality. When you speak from reality, your words land. I started doing this before phone calls. One breath, one scan. Then I'd adjust my tone accordingly. The calls became easier. Less friction, more cooperation. It wasn't magic. It was alignment. The second habit is intentional listening. Once per day, listen without planning your response. That sounds simple, but it's rare. Most people listen to reply, not to understand. When you listen fully, you catch tone shifts, hesitations, and emotional subtext. People feel it immediately. They often say, "Thanks for listening," even though you didn't give advice. That's influence. The third habit is structured expression. At least once a day, say what you mean in 3 sentences or fewer. Name the context, state your point, invite response. This keeps your communication clean and prevents resentment from building in unspoken thoughts. The fourth habit is repair. If something lands wrong, address it early. That came out sharper than I meant. Let me reset. Repair doesn't weaken you, it strengthens trust. People relax when they know you can handle misalignment without blame. The fifth habit is boundary reinforcement. Each day, choose one moment to honor a small boundary. Time, energy, or attention. You don't need confrontation. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "I'll get back to you tomorrow." Boundaries practiced daily become natural, and natural boundaries attract respect. And I watched someone change their social world in 2 weeks using nothing but these habits. They didn't become louder, they didn't become smoother, they became steadier. People began seeking their opinion, conflicts reduced, opportunities appeared, not because they demanded influence, but because they embodied it. Here's a simple 14-day rhythm. Days 1 to 3. Focus only on emotional orientation and listening. Days 4 to 7. Add structured expression. Days 8 to 10. Practice repair without self-criticism. Days 11 to 14. Reinforce one boundary per day. Don't rush. Let consistency do the work. By the end of 2 weeks, you won't feel like a different person. You'll feel like a clearer version of yourself. And clarity is magnetic. Social intelligence is not about controlling others. It's about mastering your presence. So when your presence is calm, clear, and grounded, people respond differently without knowing why. They trust you. They respect you. They follow your lead. That's the real blueprint. If there is one idea to take away from this audiobook, it's this. Social intelligence is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself, without the noise, the anxiety, and the self-doubt that distort how others experience you. When you strip those away, what remains is clarity, and clarity is power. Throughout this blueprint, we didn't talk about tricks, manipulation, or surface-level charisma. We talked about something deeper and more durable, how people feel around you. Because long after a conversation ends, that feeling is what shapes trust, respect, and influence. People don't follow the smartest voice in the room, they follow the steadiest one. Think back to the moments in your life when you felt most confident socially. Not loud, not dominant, just settled. Those moments likely shared the same ingredients. You were present, you weren't rushing to prove yourself, and you were responding to what was actually happening instead of what you feared might happen. That is social intelligence in action. We started with the foundation, emotional climate. Learning to slow down, validate, and ask before asserting isn't weakness, it's leadership. You create safety first because safety is what opens people to influence. Without it, even the best ideas bounce off closed nervous systems. Then we learned how to talk better, not by adding more words, but by using structure. Clear speech is respectful speech. When you name the moment, state your point, and invite response. You turn conversations into collaboration instead of competition. You stop performing and start guiding. From there, we moved into reading people. Not guessing, not projecting, but observing patterns and confirming gently. This skill alone can save relationships, careers, and years of unnecessary self-doubt. When you stop misreading silence as rejection or hesitation as disrespect, you stop fighting problems that don't exist. You respond to reality, and reality responds back. We explored likability, not as charm or approval-seeking, but as emotional regulation. Validation, specificity, and shared reality are not techniques. They are signals that say, "You're safe here." And when people feel safe, they become real. Real conversations are where trust is built. We talked about conversational gravity, how pauses, mirroring, and thoughtful questions make people want to stay. Not because you entertain them, but because you hold space without tension. But in a world addicted to noise, that steadiness feels rare. Rare things carry weight. Then we stepped into influence, reframing it not as force, but as presence. Influence grows when you can remain calm in moments of pressure, when you can define the frame instead of reacting inside someone else's. Authority doesn't come from being right. It comes from being regulated. Boundaries followed naturally. Clear boundaries don't push people away. They show people where you stand. They prevent resentment and build respect. When you combine warmth with limits, you become trustworthy. People know what to expect from you, and predictability is a form of safety. Finally, we turned all of this into habit. Because insight fades, but habits stay. Social intelligence becomes effortless when your nervous system learns a new baseline. Calm, clear, and present. When that happens, people stop evaluating you moment by moment. They trust you by default. Here's what I want you to remember as you leave this audiobook. You don't need to be more impressive. You need to be more grounded. You don't need to dominate conversations. You need to stabilize them. You don't need to chase influence. Influence comes when people feel better after interacting with you than they did before. This is not about winning social situations. It's about no longer losing yourself inside them. If you practice even one principle from this blueprint consistently, you will notice change. People will interrupt you less. They'll listen more. They'll seek your input. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence earned it. So take this forward in a simple way. Choose one habit, one pause, one validation, one clear sentence, one calm boundary. Let it compound. Social intelligence grows quietly, but its effects are loud in the places that matter. Your relationships, your confidence, and the way you move through the world. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this audiobook helped you see yourself and others more clearly, keep practicing. And if you know someone who feels invisible, misunderstood, or socially drained, share this with them. It might be the blueprint that helps them step into the respect and influence they've always deserved.